My name is Jeff Aaron, and I'm head of marketing here at NIST, and I'm really excited to have a great roundtable discussion and some great panelists here that are going to talk about the topic of how Wi-Fi and BLE are coming together to change the world. And I actually think it's a real timely opportunity to talk about this topic because, as you guys will attest to, the Wi-Fi space seems to be changing quite a bit with new technologies, a move to the cloud, machine learning, things like that. BLE seems to be coming on the scene as a standard in smart devices. And ultimately, this is driving new user experiences, which I think you guys are going to talk about in your industries, as well as different ways that you guys are managing wireless operations. And so we got a good panel here together to talk about this from different perspectives. Let me introduce them, and they'll have a little bit of chance to talk about who they are and their various institutions, and we can drive right in. So let's start on the end, actually. So we got Jason Watson, who's the CIO of Stanford Law School. Jason, why don't you do a brief introduction?
I've been at Stanford for almost 8 years now, and we run a interesting higher ed space in terms of we have staff, faculty, students, visitors, and it's not just classes. There's a lot of events and stuff going on, and so some of the challenges we try to address on a daily basis are things like room reservations, wayfinding, just general internet access for visitors, and library space usage, and there's a whole host of different things. But part of my job is to help make those types of resources available to the various constituents that we have at the law school, and to do so in a way that enhances their work and what they're doing. So.
Excellent, and we'll delve more into that in a second. So next to you is Shawn Jackman, who's a founder and CEO of Clinical Mobility. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that institution does, or your
Sure.
company?
I've been a long-time Wi-Fi industry guy. I've been involved in the industry at a bunch of different levels, and on the manufacturer side to the integrator side and the customer side. And I started Clinical Mobility to focus on the reliability and the security problems with wireless, and specifically healthcare. So it involves definitely a large degree of Wi-Fi and indoor location.
Excellent. Okay. We have Mitch Davis, who's definitely the best dressed of the panel.
I know.
Sorry about that. I got a call that said, "Hey, you look good."
Wait, we got to get his socks in.
Oh, here's my socks. My Halloween socks.
The skull and crossbones. But Mitch, you're the senior vice president and CIO at Bowdoin College and Bowdoin College Museum of Art. So why don't you chat a little bit about that?
Well, Bowdoin's a liberal art college that sort of got the idea 13 years ago that it wanted to be a leader in technology and integrating technology into a liberal arts education. They've been around since 1793. And we've been working on that for the last 13 years, and this MIST and with Cisco and all of the sort of things that we've integrated there, the students has brought them up as far as what the expectations are for Surface. I think that what we're doing with MIST, what we've done with other technologies has allowed us to incorporate the digital into our discussion on a continuing basis, what it means to be in English and history and all the sciences, and making that digital and thinking about it. And now that the students are all digital natives, creating that digital experience for them, incorporating all that education is what we're trying to do there.
And I know we'll chat about this. You guys have a great use case in your museum too, which we'll talk about in a second. I think it's really exciting, so we'll get there. But let's finish off, not to be outdone, is also Bob Friday. He's the CTO and co-founder at MIST. So Bob, why don't you?
Yeah, so I started my wireless career with a company called Metricon Ricochet, and there we were really focused on trying to help, people connect those first generation of internet browsers to the network, and that was about building big mesh networks across the nation. From there, I went on to start a company called Airspace, and that adventure was really focused on trying to help enterprises deal with employees bringing all these Wi-Fi laptops into their buildings and everything. And there I saw that the enterprise is really looking like WISP, right? We had a bunch of IT guys trying to take care of a bunch of radios and a bunch of wireless users. From there, Cisco acquired Airspace. I was the enterprise mobility CTO for 8 years. And there what I learned, we worked on something called Connected Mobile Experience. And one of the transitions I saw happening in the market space was, in the first Airspace adventure, it was really about trying to help enterprise IT deal with problems coming in. In this transition, it's more about helping enterprise business actually leverage these wireless networks they've built. And that's where we decided that we left, Sujay and I left Cisco and started MIST, and really to focus on trying to make, help enterprise businesses leverage these wireless investments they're making.
Cool, good. So there's a lot we're going to cover, and I think maybe a good place to start is one of these topics is Wi-Fi and BLE coming together, and we're going to talk about how Wi-Fi is changing. But let's start with the BLE section, I think, a little bit first. That's a little bit perhaps newer to the audience. And for those not familiar with BLE, it stands for Bluetooth Low Energy. Let's start there. But maybe, Bob, why don't you give a little bit more background of what is BLE and why is it interesting? Why is it all of a sudden coming to the forefront?
Yeah, and I think when you look at BLE, most of us know BLE because of our wireless headsets, right? BLE is that technology that connects your phone to your car. We get it all the time. What's probably newer that people don't realize is that was classic Bluetooth. What they've come out with is BLE is actually a part of the spec. We're really focused on low energy, low data rate applications. One of those things is something called beacons now, BLE beacons. And this is a technology that Apple and Google are integrating in their mobile devices. And it's really focused on trying to help people get proximity, contextual information when they're close, right? This is when you walk into a venue or a place, this BLE technology is really there to really help connect with the phones. And one of the things I'm most excited about is really, if you look at market transitions, you look what happened with Wi-Fi, that transition really took off when Intel put Wi-Fi into laptops.
That's
right? Right, and that's what caused IT guys the most pain, right? All of a sudden they saw all these, all these employees bringing these laptops in, trying to find Wi-Fi. IT guys are going crazy. I think what we're seeing in this transition, Google and Apple are putting this BLE technology on their mobile devices. It's really marketing guys driving the IT guy crazy in this transition.
Yeah.
Right? There's all these use cases that people want to leverage to engage with their employees or their consumers. And that's where I think you're seeing this BLE technology is going to be a major catalyst to really bring an indoor location on par with outdoor cellular GPS.
Yes, which is a great transition for these guys then. So, I'd love to get your guys' take. So maybe starting with Mitch. Are you seeing BLE moving from kind of a nice to have to a must have? And what are the top use cases that you think are driving it at your college and at the museum?
I mean, as you think about BLE and what you can do with it, we were working in the museum case, and it was just one idea.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't have 20 or 30 more out there, but the idea was, how could you expand the customer experience to a museum? And using BLE, location, wayfinding, all of those things we started incorporating into, and virtual beacons that allowed us to create an idea that we could create a museum for kids, and press a button and create a museum for adults, create a special museum for a tour, and reconfigure the museum.
Museums within the museum.
Yeah, and you could create patterns, and then you could sit there and add content to that experience. You could add video, you could add audio, and it would be all location driven. So you're standing in front of a picture that you're admiring, but you know nothing about it. And all of a sudden you bring up your viewer, because you have this viewer, this augmented reality viewer, and all this content's available to you to expand that experience.
Yeah.
And that would not have been available and not be seen as essential. But now the museum is not going to let go of this. And everybody I bring it up to, whether it's the Smithsonian or MoMA or the CIOs, they're already seeing all these ways that they can imply that. So it's just a matter of getting the technology to the point where people can come together with some business, and when you put the two together, all these ideas come out. And I think the same thing that MIST is seeing from the few conversations I've had, no matter what industry they go into. They start talking to the group, and it's not the one thing they want to do. They have all these ideas they can all of a sudden do.
Yeah, and I think before we go to some of the other folks, I want to delve into that a little bit. So who is driving the initiative? Is it IT? Is it more, someone who's in charge?
Well, I also do marketing,
Yes.
So the digital and social media is on my side. And I sit in these meetings with the museum trying to discuss ways of marketing the museum. And what I've pretty much moved from, we used to be paper first, sort of the analog. So the analog of that is I always look at digital. But I want to create a better experience than what the paper version was. Mm-hmm. So that's what MIST allows us to do. And I think for everything we do now, it's digital first, and then everything else falls underneath that. And that's changing. And if you look at the culture, that's kind of what's happening.
Cool. Now, Shawn, you're focused on the healthcare space, and that's actually been one of the earlier adopters of Bluetooth. And so why don't you talk about maybe some use cases that you see?
Sure, and I think it's important to put this into context. So why BLE, or why are we talking about this Bluetooth? And so Bluetooth has been a bad word for a lot of wireless people for many years. It was very unfriendly. Well, as Bob said, BLE is a new sub-specification of the Bluetooth standard. The Bluetooth SIG has been working on this a long time to try to figure out how to make Bluetooth more compatible with Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi was so dominant. And they really did that with Bluetooth Low Energy. So for all of the IT folks out there, it's important to understand BLE, if it's truly just operating in a BLE mode, it is friendly with Wi-Fi. Now, when you look at BLE and why there's such momentum behind it, BLE has consumerized indoor location. Indoor location is a thing that we've been seeking and to take advantage of for many times. So marketing, improving the consumer, the member, the patient, the buyer's experience as best we can. There's a lot of things we can do, even if it's just helping people navigate large complex facilities to driving more revenue from them, for increasing the educational opportunities. Many, many use cases. Healthcare has many as well. Like you said, that you have 20 probably or more. Bob, you and I have talked about this for years, and we've been searching for this. What is the right indoor location technology? And through our mobile phones, because you're absolutely right, it's been put into it. And that's why I think that we have this incredible opportunity to leverage an indoor location technology that's been...
Are any specific use cases jumping out, like wayfinding or asset tracking, or just all of them? I mean, what do you see as the biggest?
Hospitals are large, complex, and ever-changing facilities. You may have to go to get an X-ray in one department. You may be admitted here. You have to go to the lab. You have to go to the pharmacy. Wait, which pharmacy? Right. So you have a lot of people moving around these facilities, and hospitals invest a lot in signage, and paper signage, and then digital signage. So you want to figure out how to tap into new people. So the younger generation and the millennials, anybody with a phone, I mean, you literally can tap into that, and even make people aware of, hey, we have a farmer's market today. Come visit it.
Maybe one thing, Shawn, I point out, when I've been talking to healthcare customers, it seems like healthcare has always been the point of the spear on indoor location, voice over Wi-Fi.
I think so too. Yeah.
When I've talked to these guys, though, it seems like what's happening now in their RTLS investments, they're looking at BLE as kind of this non-proprietary technology that they can leverage. They've been investing around a lot of vertical RTLS solutions, and now they're looking at BLE as maybe this potential way, kind of like Wi-Fi, right? It has a big ecosystem of devices. They're not buying into a single part of thing.
They're not buying a tag. They don't need to buy a tag because the tag's built into their phone. And that's the biggest game changer.
Right. So I think that's one of the things I've seen in the healthcare space.
Well, the other thing I find interesting in your space, we chatted a little bit about this before, is a lot of hospitals have someone whose whole job is about patient experience.
Yes.
Right. And other verticals may as well, but I know in healthcare in particular, it's very focused on the experience. Yeah. And so how much of this BLE is driven by the IT guys or by the experience officer?
Yeah, you have these new segments of healthcare, the digital health team, or these folks that straddle the marketing and sales and the public facing side of the organization to make the hospitals more attractive to patients, because it's a competitive business, and people have high expectations.
Yeah, cool. And so I know, Jason, you have some similar apps around Wayfind, but you also have some interesting stuff around some of the conference room scheduling. So I think that's interesting as well.
Yeah, that's largely been our driving use case. Is we have a few dozen conference rooms spread throughout our buildings, and it's really been, up until now, the wild, wild west in terms of getting them. There are 4 different reservation systems that control the space in the law school, and they don't all work together, and different groups. Maybe the library controls some meeting spaces, maybe the dean's office controls some others, the registrar controls some classroom spaces, and maybe our facilities control everything else. And so if you're a visitor or student, you just want a place to study, and you want to sort of sit down and do your work. And part of the problems we had were, if you had a meeting scheduled in that room, student didn't know that, and there was no mechanism for them to know that. So what we're really looking at this technology to drive, and it's been largely successful so far, is you walk up to a room and you see the schedule, and okay, that room's booked, but you can also see on the floor plan there's a room down the hall that's similar and it's available, and you can book it. And so it brings that level of transparency to all of our constituents and users. But the difference between, for us, for BLE, is that getting that high level of accuracy when you have 2 doors next to each other. And so that if I walk up this door, I'm going for this room and not the one next door. And when they are just a few feet apart, that really matters.
Challenge. Did you have to do any kind of hard analysis to justify that investment? Like how much time is spent with people randomly walking around looking for conference rooms?
The frustration level is so high that
it's
it's an obvious thing for us to do. And so being able to deliver that on any mechanism, much less, even if it was paper, would have been.
Do you guys find the same thing? I mean, do you find you don't even have to do an ROI in this? It's just business.
I think there's always an ROI involved, and if not a physical one, as a mental one that you go through as to what the value is. Because you are going to be put in a room with who's going to ask you why you did it. I think for us, looking at ROI, the museum is just a point to basically put together the game plan and also the arguments as to what the value is. And I think that we'll take a small one, analyze all the stuff, come up with all the things we can do, and then see how that would push out across the campus. And I think we'll have 10 good arguments to go forward with by the time we're done with the museum, and we'll probably replace all of we do a complete replacement about every 4 or 5 years. So that'll come up. We'll measure what we want to do and the benefit of one versus the other. And I think the fact that you can reconfigure your whole campus, you get all this sort of history about what's going on across the campus, the way you manage the access points. It's just an environment that we see for the future is that how we're managing it today isn't going to work. Because we've got wireless access points going into fields, out across research areas. We've got islands and offices in New York.
I do want to touch on that in a new operational paradigm. Real quick, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, because I think it comes down to a business case, not always an ROI. Sometimes it ties into frustration, soft costs. I mean, it's hard to justify, the hardliners. It's tough to do that with.
Okay, so I do want to come back. So that touches on kind of another topic I wanted to talk about, and it's not just BLE anymore. It's I think Wi-Fi too. Are you guys seeing a new paradigm in kind of how you operate?
I think for us, you can't fail. It's the expectation of before you could put Wi-Fi up, whether it was 2.0 and people were just glad it was there. And now it isn't existent. I would say it's an instantaneous issue with us. And since we measure our IT performance by client experience, our goal is always how do we step up the experience. In other words, Wi-Fi needs to be available. BLE, if they're using it, depending on how we've deployed it, needs to be there. And we need to know when it's not.
So you made a very good point, which I think is great. To really answer your question about ROI and maybe in business case, you're talking about measuring, you measure something, so this is a tool now to help you quantify and measure that experience and to drive the data.
And I may, one thing I may add, Jess, when you look back at Mist and when we started Mist, we didn't start Mist as a BLE company. Really the broader trend we're looking at here was really is it time for a new architecture behind these wireless networks? Right, and that was really behind, can we really start leveraging the cloud, the big data technologies that are out there to really provide more insights into what the user is actually doing, right? And I think this is really to that transition around. You look at enterprise businesses now, it's more about how they want to engage their students, their guests, their members. They're in that phase of their business now. It's not about applying just connectivity. It's more about providing that experience inside their
Well, it goes back to what I was talking about, digital experience. It's the difference between just the experience now is that you walk in, the first thing you think about, what's their digital experience walk into my business? And you think it needs to be connected, it needs to have data, and you need to be able to know what they're doing. So what's the goal of digital? The goal of digital is one, to reach out, but also when you reach out, you reach in. Because you're pulling in data from all these people, so you can up the ante a little bit.
It just reminds me of my, the early days of aerospace, right? I remember trying to raise money back then and try to convince people on the ROI of Wi-Fi, right? And bring connectivity. It's like, why would I even need that? I've got these perfectly wired networks. I don't need this. Why do I need this wireless?
We have ports all over the place.
I think we're in that same phase around indoor location. The question is, indoor location going to go from a nice to have to a must have? I think once people start to realize what you can do, what it brings to that connectivity experience. I think we've had friction over the years, right? We were doing indoor location, Shawn and I, 10, 15 years ago. Healthcare really made an impact in the healthcare industry. It never really went outside of healthcare manufacturing. It became kind of an asset tracking technology. I think
the RFID stuff we were talking about earlier.
I think what we're really talking about is the friction points, right? And the friction points of doing it are becoming smaller.
Well, you also touched on something else, because if you're harking back to the aerospace days, a big thing was automating the RF management, right? think now, even in wireless and BLE, you're seeing more automation around machine learning and other types of aspects. So I'm curious if you guys have kind of seen that in terms of how you operate. Does that change the way you guys operate wireless at all? Do you embrace automation, or are you scared?
Well, yeah, you're constantly automating. You can't keep going with. You'd have to add staff if you can't automate. And
there's probably a few people that know me that are on the edge of their chairs. How's Shawn going to answer this question? The auto RF stuff has been way over marketed, overhyped. We've talked long and hard about this, and I think we agree. There are beneficial aspects of it, absolutely, but they have to be written right. And when you deploy an access point or a controller, which is really, think about it, still autonomous, it's disconnected. It's not internet enabled. It's not connected to a cloud, to something, to have machine learning to take data on a continuous basis. It fell down. And what this new architecture really represents, a way to really, now your infrastructure is connected to a common fabric. We can continuously learn, identify, and even possibly correct challenges on an ongoing basis. And so it's not this technology we throw out there and we don't touch it for a long time and it sits there and keeps decomposing as it sits there. Now we're actually breathing new life into it and be able to leverage new services and capabilities with it that we just frankly weren't possible for because it wasn't connected.
And I think that, when I was talking with customers at Cisco, it'd be, those conversations started to change from, Bob, if I'm going to put this critical mobile app on my network, or I'm going to put some critical service on my network, I really need to know that this wireless stuff. I need to know the wireless stuff is working. I need to know the end user has a great experience, because that was kind of the foundation of the whole thing. Otherwise, they were going to put a big spotlight on a big problem, right? If that network was not 99.9%, they were asking for trouble.
So it's not enough to know when it's bad. You need to know when it's good as well.
I think people want to know how's the actual user's performance, not
the
just that the AP's running.
Right.
Does the user actually have a good enough connectivity?
And you can reach into the system and figure that out.
Yeah.
You can see those kinds of things you could never see before.
Is this, maybe Jason, you can start. Is this changing the way you guys build your IT departments? Are you looking for different skill sets?
Absolutely, yeah. So
that's a whole other topic.
So I'm more focused on building the services through our apps and mobile applications versus building people that are sitting there looking at the networks all the time, because those services that I can build on top of it are the value add that my users don't really necessarily care about what's going on behind the scenes. They care about what the information is, how they're getting it, what their experience is. And so my team has shifted more towards the development side of the world than to the back end network engineer or systems engineer.
Yeah, this will put it into perspective. And I'm thinking back.
Are people know you on the edge of their seats again?
Yeah, no, it's scared. A little perspective here. Here we are, 2016. A colleague of mine put together an analysis for the Gartner report, and the Gartner report, I think it was in 2004, said, "Hey, world, IT is now a strategic part of how companies are going to do business." People are like,
I thought IT was dead 15
yeah,
years ago.
right.
Exactly.
I don't know. IT's that
CIOs are going away.
IT's that group in the basement. They're they can't talk to people right. And here we are, right? We're looking at the Internet of Things, the cloud. Everything's enabled. We have technology. It's embedded in everything.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's absolutely a part of the business.
Yeah.
And we have to look at IT departments as, you have to have technologists, and technology has to be done right, but it's not about a matter of hiring, certified experts in their technology domains anymore. The more cloud enabled, the more automated the infrastructure is, you kind of need less of
I think
those.
Mitch, you had a great line. What did you say, if you can't hire and build them or something like that? Or grow
Can't
them?
hire them, build them, or grow them, because one of the things is you can't find very many of them. When you do, there's a lot of people who want them.
And specifically, what I think is worth highlighting, you said, I want a computer science undergrad with an MBA. Right? It's a good mix of the technology and the business. And we totally agree. But my comment was, good luck finding those. Well,
right
let's
there.
build them, right? Right. But that's, so to your question about IT departments, absolutely. IT has to be connected in with the business. And I still see such resistance today.
Yeah.
Even large enterprises where they just want to run a network, they're like, no, I'm just going to focus on operations. You're missing the boat. Right? Yeah. And IT has to be an integrated part of the business.
So I have an example of that. I had a company with Gartner, And they were sitting around the table and they were talking to my technical staff, and they said, "What's the first thing when you start developing an app? Or whether it's an application or building an experience?" And he said, "We think about customer experience. When we start designing something, we don't start with the technology. We thought, what are we trying to create? What kind of thing are we trying to do? And then, but you do need, and I disagree somewhat, but very technical people." And because if you're thinking of virtualizing everything, including this, we're now talking about virtualizing just like VMware did the server environment. We were upping the whole thing to the network.
It's a different conversation.
And then the wireless, everything floats on that. The level of expertise that you have to have in that area, because one, it's a new area, is much higher. So grow them and keep them as much as you can, because they aren't out there.
I would add, I was just in a meeting with it was a big mall customer, right? In that meeting nowadays, I had a CEO on one side and I had the head of analytics on the other side of the table. And that whole discussion really was about, what data could the analytics guy get from the network? It's becoming much more of that type of discussion. And his team was really based on a lot of computer science guys. They know their way around databases. They know their way around APIs. It's more about how the data was going to get to his system to actually do something with it.
Let's talk about analytics, because I know in the pre-show you guys all brought this up as a hot topic. So what do you look for, in terms of top analytics that you want to get at it? Your wireless domain or your application domain, or
usage, what they're doing. And the other thing you can do, as we've found, is if we want to monitor customer experience, we can actually go in and look at how fast they're getting using the software, how fast it's responding using the software that you guys have. And we're looking at putting triggers in for various people, especially high-profile people. We want to make sure their experience is good. We're going to condition the experience so that it's feeding us information constantly, and we'll make sure that person's having an exceptional experience the whole time, and we'll know immediately when something goes wrong. That wasn't possible before.
I think from a space utilization standpoint as well, seeing what areas of the law school are being used and what aren't, and that helps us make future decisions as, are we going to build this, or are we going to renovate this, or how are we going to figure this space, and that's been huge.
And analytics is a tool to measure whatever the business aspect of what each of our respective businesses are. So the patient experience, the museum experience, the utilization. So you could have different stakeholders within even each of our organizations would have a different lens they would want to look at. So analytics. So we have to put this into perspective. What GPS did to the world. Many of us bought these little electronic things, we stuck them on our dash. GPS, oh great, the world became aware of GPS. Look where we've gone with GPS. It's integrated into your browser now, into everything. We haven't yet, so we're starting to tap GPS to a very large degree, but it only works outdoors. So think about what indoor location is going to open us up to. And people haven't yet realized the opportunities that exist. We're starting with one use case, maybe because it's important, it's a burning issue with our businesses, but the opportunities really are expensive.
Maybe, Shawn, when you think about indoor location, right, you and I have been working on it for the last 10, 15 years. What have been the friction points of stopping indoor location from going more broadly? Healthcare is kind of one place where, Wi-Fi location was deployed broadly. Almost all hospitals have some sort of asset tracking system built into it. But, what have you seen indoor location stopping the rest of the industry from adopting it?
Yeah, some of it has been very proprietary. There hasn't really been a standard. You had to put a tag on anything you wanted to track. Now, I'm going to hold up a fictitious cell phone. The tag's in here, right? The BLE has consumerized indoor location. And that is, now I can have an infrastructure that I'm already deploying wireless. When there's Wi-Fi, we can talk about the combination of the two. So there's opportunities to track people with Wi-Fi, there's opportunity to track people with BLE. Yes, I can add tags to other things that maybe, maybe they're not even electronic, but they're expensive, and it's important to the business to track them. Yeah. So I think that's been a big part of what's held us back in healthcare.
I think it's too complicated.
It's a science project.
You look, and they had location stuff 15 years ago. You could go ahead and you could people walking around. To implement that took so much work to get it to work. It didn't just come up when you put in a system. You had to go and configure the whole space.
You had to keep tuning it.
It was a pain.
Managing batteries and everything.
And also, I think The difference is I can show it to people in a museum and have no technical experience, and they recognize value.
Yeah.
When I showed that other experience, people would do it, but how am I going to do it? They aren't saying that now. They're not saying that. What can I do with it?
Yeah. And maybe it comes that they're used to some of those experiences outdoors, and so they can kind of already.
That's possible. Yeah.
Our reference point is now we all get it, right? So we're starting to learn the opportunities that can be taken advantage of, and I just don't think we've all woken up to what those opportunities are indoors.
No,
it's incredible.
Well, the funny thing too is it strikes me. I love the GPS analogy because even that's evolved to you look at the standard Garmin moving to like a Waze with machine learning, where it can tell you how to route around traffic, which lane to go in, and I think you're seeing that even with indoor too to make it.
I mean, that's why what I see happening here is I'm excited. I think I see a perfect storm of technologies coming together, right? We have kind of the cloud, the machine learning. So now we can basically eliminate site surveys, so that eliminates some of the deployment problems. We have the convergence of Wi-Fi and BLE, which eliminates the overlay networks. I think that was a big friction for most industries. They weren't willing to, spend the money on a separate network. And then we finally have the device side, which I think is the final key part. I mean, because there's been tons of location technologies, right? Ultra wideband.
Yeah, and there still are.
There's plenty of like location technology. It's really getting that complete ecosystem together. Yeah. And the device side is the key part of that.
But you also might have the client in a place to be ready.
Yeah,
where in the past it would have been like sci-fi.
Everyone's now location.
And now the take-up could be very quick.
Yeah. So you touched on something that I think to kind of wrap this down a little bit. I think there's two topics. You mentioned convergence, right? We talked about Wi-Fi, BLE, converged hardware infrastructure, but I have kind of two questions on convergence. One is, do you guys see instances where it's not just Wi-Fi and BLE on the same platform, it's actually Wi-Fi and BLE together, working happily? So let's talk about that. And then my other question is maybe to noodle on a little bit is IoT. Where do you see that kind of coming together?
The first question, I mean, the library example I was talking about earlier, I mean, Wi-Fi would be great for kind of the heat map of where people are or where they aren't, but BLE would be great to help find a resource. If there's a particular legal collection that is, in a certain part of the library, how would I get there? So I see them kind of both coexisting in that respect, and and across other use cases as well. But I mean, that's in the library is a particularly good place that comes to mind where they would both kind of coexist.
Yeah, I think each of them have their strengths. Wi-Fi is a given. I don't think there's many people anymore that say, well, should we do Wi-Fi, right? I think we've crossed that curve.
Thank God.
Yeah, I know, right?
At least in the first world.
In the convergence of the two, I mean, it's happening, and I would argue the next one is cellular. It's really, you need wireless infrastructure, and different technologies have their advantages and disadvantages, and Bluetooth low energy gives you an opportunity to do super cheap, and with a battery that, with a low energy, focus of the Bluetooth SIG, and taking a small little coin cell battery for a tag to last such a long time. And there's hardly any electronics that goes in it. The cost is so low. So you can now tag a whole lot of things very inexpensively. And Wi-Fi, now you don't need to put a BLE tag on a laptop or anything that already has Wi-Fi. But the key is to leverage so when you have a converged infrastructure, you now have flexibility and leveraging the right technology for that use case to get our ROI, to build our business case appropriately.
There's a group in higher ed called EduRoam. Have you ever heard of it?
Great group, yeah.
So anywhere in the world, if you're an EduRoam member, you're on the Wi-Fi. You walk in a university in Germany and you're registered. You're in the States, you just start using your phone. So if you think of Wi-Fi, a way of unifying it and then overlaying that with BLE and the services you could have, but it knows you no matter where you are in the world, and wherever there's wireless. So if you think of cellular going away, that's what you can start seeing. Cellular going away, you wouldn't even need it if it recognized you and it was ubiquitous.
Yeah, and I was saying that's actually, I think the cellular can go away, but I think in most, it doesn't need to. In fact, I think it's when you look at 5G and where everything's going, and AX, with H11. I mean, a lot of frequencies, sometimes you want to use, there's a lot. I'll spare the details, but I think cellular. If you're just visiting a facility, you don't want to have to get on the Wi-Fi and go through that experience. Just stay on cellular, right? So, but our infrastructure needs to support cellular, BLE, and Wi-Fi, in my opinion, in the long term. Right?
And maybe one thing I maybe get your opinion on, because when I did aerospace, to me I saw these enterprises trying to become WISP, right? They have these wireless networks and users. here it seems like they're more of that kind of full service providers, right?
Yes.
They're building apps, they're doing services.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think the consumption, do you see that the enterprises will start consuming wirelesses more as an outsourcing service? Do you think the enterprises will be focused on running and operating these things themselves more?
I don't think so. I think that they'll be dumping it like the rest of the stuff you do is because it's if you can get rid of it and you turn it into a cost, then you can take your people and put them on something else. And I don't usually get more people.
Yeah, exactly.
I only have so much time, so it's automate or outsource. And if Wi-Fi becomes a commodity, maybe BLI does too, but what you build on that platform is what you would be able to do with these people.
Yeah, 'cause I always wonder, if they see there's kind of what's critical to a business. If you're a retailer, your business is selling stuff. It's not particularly running and operating these networks. So I'm curious to see if that transition is going to happen.
Yeah, I think wireless RF expertise is a completely almost non-existent in this industry. It's unfortunate, which is why so many people struggle with wireless in general. I think there will always be a need, for IT departments to have to augment that talent base. But for many organizations, if I just run an office and I have my employees connecting with laptops and phones, I don't need to have the IT team with the vertical expertise and knowing every nerd knob on it's just we need to provide connectivity. I need guests and get my employees on securely and reliably. Right? I think it's ripe.
Well, going back to cellular too, I don't have experts in cellular on my staff, and yet everybody uses it.
Yeah, and almost nobody does. And
right.
I mean, I think that's what we're seeing, this mobilization thing, right? I mean, your employees are looking more and more like consumers, right? They spend they're doing most of their work, on some other network or outside of the office now. So I think that's the other thing we're starting to see is the consumerization of the workforce.
I don't know if that's a good transition or not, but IoT, that's some degree consumerization, but also more, HVAC and other things.
So I would say, aren't hospitals really into IoT as far as facilities management?
And I think any large facility is, we see in the consumer world, we see the thermostats, we see lights that we can turn on and off. I mean, there's a real ROI in that, right? Absolutely. But
it's very quantifiable.
But wow, how do you connect all these darn things? And how do you do it securely? And how do I, whoa, right? There's a lot of concern there. And, there was a lot of proprietary aspects of it too. Wi-Fi is going to play an absolutely massive part of that. Newer technology with Wi-Fi can really support many, many, many devices if designed right.
We're using it as a driver to develop for our audio-visual controls in our spaces. Such that, I mean, if you think of a AV controller as a part of the network, and the projector is part of the network, and everything that's connected to it. We're able, if you're a faculty member, we'll give you kind of full carte blanche on the whole run anything. If you're a student, we're not going to let you necessarily control the system. And so being able to deliver those controls to the device and have the MIST system kind of be the gatekeeper of that is huge for us.
Yeah, anything with a light switch on the wall or a remote is right for an Internet of Things type of conversation. It's like my pool pumps at home, right? From my phone, I can turn that on or off. I change the hours of the day. I can check with if this then that to say, well, if the weather's going to be this today, I can make it run longer or shorter. You look, I mean, what? Yeah. Right? The opportunities are endless. There are a ton of them.
It also drives the purchase decision later on. I don't necessarily need the fancy touchscreen controller anymore in the room.
You don't?
I don't. And that's
your phone's your fancy touchscreen.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's funny that programmability came up a lot with IoT. Do you guys see programmability a lot on the other aspects? Wi-Fi, BLE? You would do like mass beacon changes.
That's what I mean. One of the things, if we did a campus replacement, is we're looking at that right now. Is a group would come into the museum. We could configure the museum as far as its extended view for that particular audience. But if you think it's across the campus, we have all kinds of constituents that come. Alumni, we have alumni weekend. You could just click and have a whole campus set up for alumni weekend with big beacons and all kinds of stuff, wayfinding set up to get them to the classes. And if you think of any industry that has to deal with an inflow of people and you want them to move to a certain space and then you want to monitor and deliver to where they are, you just count them.
And I'm going to double down on your statement. When you deploy any infrastructure, if you look at it from an IT or a facilities management or an operational aspects, you don't deploy something and then have to go manually check on it later. The last organization, the healthcare organization I came from, we did the numbers on what it would take to deploy a legacy, which was at the time was state of the art of BLE infrastructure. Was this tag you'd stick on the wall? It had a battery, and there was no communication with anything else, right? So you look at this problem. I think we did the math. It was about 250,000 beacons we'd have to add. Do you want to manage 250,000 batteries? I don't, and I don't want to even get in that business. So now you look at what's your real impact of investment by putting this in. So if you can minimize that infrastructure or make it connected to then do, like you said, hey, we have something going on this weekend. Let's add some virtual beacons with the marketing person to do that.
But I think, Kevin, programmability
and content.
Yes.
I'm starting to see customers talk about using virtual beacons to control lights, and it's really becoming a back-end discussion about how to connect all these different things, right? And that's where I think the architecture on the back end is more about the data flows, and how do you get the information from the wireless or the BLE system, tied into the control system inside your building.
That's all you're talking about. The control systems are already there. They're coming with ways of communicating. Right. We have probably 100,000 sensors across our campus that feed in heat, lights, all the stuff around those buildings. We actually do measurements of our buildings. We have competitions. Who can save the most money and stuff like that. Awesome. All of it's rated online, and that's prior to this. Now, a lot of that's run over wireless, a lot of that's run over wired. But if you think about, if you can build the connector to tie those devices back into the BLE, there's all kinds of stuff you could do with it. We haven't even thought of doing yet.
That's where I think the discussion started to change from the what can your CLI do, what can your AP do, to more about what does your API do, what's in the JSON blobs.
But it's like computing in general. We always start off with the lowest of layers, doing very simple, doing a lot of work to do simple tasks, and then we start abstracting. So the concept of abstraction, we build a technology, and then it becomes something that we now build a technology on top of that technology. And then it's making it to the point to where it's Star Trek, where Scotty sits at the console and talks to the computer. What do you shove that one guy? No, I know how to know computers. Let me do this. And it's expectation, because you abstracted all of the mundane crap. Right? And that's what computing is going. So this whole conversation is about abstracting us from, the crap. Take your people, have them focus on more business, valuable aspects.
Using the tech.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So final question. What's next? What do you guys want to see from wireless? What do you expect to see? And I've been going back and forth whether I start with Bob or end with Bob on this one. I think we'll start with Bob. You're one of the technology innovators in the wireless space. So what do you see kind of next for wireless kind of going forward?
Yeah, from my perspective, what I see happening here is, this cloud technology is going to make a big difference. I see that as one of the big change
more than people realize.
Change point, because that is what is allowing machine learning and all these algorithms to take place.
At scale.
The other thing coming together is the big data.
Right.
This is all the Spark and all that stuff, allowing you to do some of this data at scale. And probably the third thing that you mentioned is programmability. Is really tying this all together of API and JSON, messaging, right? Where it is more about people are spending their time actually using the technology, writing programs to solve business problems. The underlying technology is now to the point that's just functioning, and we're basically extracting the information all the way down to the end users. Right? I think the first generation was more about, hey, we're just trying to help enterprises get their Wi-Fi networks up and make sure they can manage them. This transition is more about trying to help them actually use these networks.
If you think of being digital, and that people have given up a lot of freedom of information. Basically, everybody knows you. If they don't know you, they get in the darknet, they know you. How you use that information, I think there's a high expectation. Okay, I'll let you know who I am. I'll let you know where I am. I'll let you know what I'm doing. I'll let you know what I'm buying. What are you going to do for me with that information? And I think that's what's coming in the future, is the way you're going to be able to custom configure solutions. When you walk in to buy a car, if you think of walking up to that car, it's already going to know the cars you've owned. It's going to know your history with those cars, and it's going to speak to you and say, we have an idea that this car is for you.
Your traffic record and say, this one's not for you.
Right.
And, it's funny.
Top speed 180, you just got a ticket for 140.
In a funny story.
Your health insurance.
So I know when my 14-year-old son is using my computer or my account, with my YouTube account, I see these things pop up. I'm like, that, that's not stuff I search for.
I think we're getting to the point, right? Driving will be legal here shortly. I just drive around these self-driving cars.
Human driving.
A couple of years, it's
Probably
going to
on
be a
certain
big.
roads. It'll probably start with certain roads that you have to have a self-driving car.
And to Mitch's point earlier about EduRoam, I see not just my campus and the parts of my campus leveraging these new services we're putting together, but I'm seeing it being spread across multiple campuses, universities across the world, such that my room control, my law school room is the same as Mitch's college, and so that's where I see a lot of this driving, and I'm excited about that.
If you walk into a room, let's say you have this augmented reality viewer, and instead of Nest, there's a virtual version of Nest on your phone. And you can walk into any room and it's already configured to what you want. That's the kind of stuff I think you're seeing. You're going to walk into a hotel room and it's going to know from how you stayed before how you like your room set up. Whether there's privacy, you have to hang the stupid card, and that always pisses me off. I got to hang that card. I don't like them to touch my room. When I go into my room, they should know that by now.
Just have the bedcloth already taken off.
Just do it. And I think those kinds of services are coming, and we're just touching it right now. In hospitals, there's so much stuff they could do with that.
Casinos, restaurants.
Right. Of course, casinos, because they figure out a way to get in your pocket one way or the other.
Yeah. On that note, good. I appreciate the time. I think it was a great conversation, and again, it was a good conversation. So.